correct? Not feels. Feel.
Yeah, feel. Yeah.
Feel. I keep wanting to say feels. Tim Qualls. Okay, cool. And then your website again is what?
TimQualls.com.
TimQualls.com. You got lucky, man. You got the name.
I did it early, man. Early.
Did it early. Smart guy. You know, I've been in negotiations with another Brad Gilmore for probably 5 years. Every so
Oh
often,
man.
when his name starts coming up for renewal, I go, "Hey, man, are you still holding on to that domain?" Because he doesn't use it, and it drives me
Yeah.
up a wall. Drives me up a wall.
There used to be another Tim Qualls in Delaware who had worked for a TV station, and he had his own TV show, the Tim Qualls Show. So when I started putting stuff online, it was just all of him. And so when they would Google me, they think I was this really old guy, 60-year-old guy doing TV interviews. And I'm like, no, I'm a different guy, and you have to go to like page 3 or 4 to find me. Now I'm on page 1, but back then I was like 4, 5, 6 pages deep.
took a couple tries. I hear you. We've all been there, man. There's some like Oklahoma City sheriff who does YouTube videos, also named Brad Gilmore, and I
That's
get
great.
him a lot. I get like
That's
tweets from
great.
him. But anyway, we'll get this started here in 5, 4. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the CW39 Spotlight. My name is Brad Gilmore, and joining us today is a Houston native whose brand new album, Feel, comes out this Friday, and he's joining us in studio right now, Mr. Tim Qualls. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Look, I'm excited for your album, man. I took the morning to listen to a lot of the records that are on it and really take them in. It's a very awesome vibe that you have going for you, and I would
Thank you.
say, in terms of Houston music, it's uniquely your own. I can't think of anybody else who's had a sound similar to yours. If you were to describe it, which is always a hard thing to do, but if you were to describe your sound for people, how would you try to attempt to do that?
Yeah, so my elevator pitch is rootsy alternative soul pop. So this year I added alternative. It used to be rootsy soul pop, but now after working with PR and stuff like that, they kind of put you where you fit within the realm of the music world. So rootsy alternative soul pop. I always say too, I'm like a crooner that sits at the piano a little bit. So that's my main instrument. So a lot of my stuff was rooted in piano for sure.
Yeah, a lot of keys in your music, which is great. I hear what you're saying with the soul pop as well. For this record, I mean, everybody has their different processes when they're putting together an album. For this album, what was the timeline? When did you start working on these tunes that we're going to hear, and kind of how long did it take to complete?
Yeah, so I think I started on the demos for this album maybe almost 2 years ago now. I think it was like maybe November, December 2021, when I started kind of writing a couple of the songs, and I kind of felt like I was onto something. And then the actual recording process, once I took those demos into the real studio, it took about 18 months of just like 4 or 5 days a week, just in the studio for 8 hours, and with my music partner, Ty Robbins, and we just went to work for 18 months basically. And so a couple months ago, I started releasing some of the singles, and so here I am. I can't believe I'm really close to the release of it because we've been working hard for a while, man.
I know. I'm sure umpteenth number of mixes and going through and changing this, changing that, fixing the EQ on certain things. Now, this is always something that's interesting, especially as you finish the project. Did you start to have that, I don't know, feeling that sometimes you get when an album's close to release and you've heard these songs hundreds of times, I'm sure, over an 18-month period? Did you start to get that, wait a minute, are these even good anymore? Or am I, you know what I mean? Like, everybody has that, at least for me, when I'm putting out records, I'm like, I've heard these songs so much, I start to get in my head and think, is anybody else going to like this? Do you have that anxiousness before release, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, of course. I think the only time I'm really excited is during the first like 6 weeks of me creating the thing and having the idea. And then, I'll have peaks and valleys when we're doing the recording process of, oh man, this is amazing. And then I'll go home and listen, and I'm like, oh no, I suck. This sucks. I'm not good. This song sucks, or whatever. But, I've learned over my career that people liking it and the results and all that, that's out of my control, And so I've just tried to really put forth my best foot by creating the best art that I can, and I just kind of know at this point, it's not about me and my feelings. I can just kind of release the song and just let it go where it goes. I've got a couple tunes in my past that, 7-8 years later have kind of found new footing and found its way onto a Spotify editorial and something. So you never quite know where the journey is for a song. And there's so many cases out there like that with similar things 30 years later, 40 years later, where a song pops off. So yeah, heck yeah. I'm anxious as heck to get it off my chest, but I'm also relishing the last few days where these songs are just mine. And I'd say my kids, because my kids have been listening to them too, but I'm relishing the last few days where it's just mine and I can finally just release it into the world and honestly just kind of move on to start creating some new stuff.
Yeah, that's always kind of what starts to get in the back of your mind. Once this album's finished and locked and is getting ready to release, you're thinking, well, what can I do next? What do I have any other tunes? But going to your songwriting process, I think everybody's is different. For you, do you start at the keys and try to come up with a melody? Or are you somebody who has the song title in your head and tries to write around the idea? What is your process, especially for the album Feel?
I've done all of the above. Sometimes, a lot of the ideas will come like when I'm hanging out, when I'm doing things that aren't musical, and they're coming to you. Like I have a 6-month-old daughter, so I'm changing a lot of diapers. So I'm singing her melodies and lullabies and things. So sometimes I'm like, oh, wait, that was good. Hold on. So I'll take the baby into this room and I'll record a voice memo real quick just to make sure I hold on to it. Then I'll go back to being a dad. So, but a lot of the album and the ideas for the album specifically literally started in this chair. And sometimes I'm playing a chord. Sometimes I hear a sample sound that inspires it. I'm always noodling, always trying to figure out. I'm just trying to discover, and just find needles in a haystack, if you will. So yeah, I remember the first song, "Stay," which is the first song on the album. I hit 2 chords, F and G minor, and I was like, oh, that's the beginning of something. I wasn't quite sure, and so from that moment, everything that I wrote after that was for the album. It was kind of with that whole idea and that process. So there is a connective tissue with all 10 songs that are on the album. But yeah, I'll sit in the computer a lot of the times in the DAW. I use a program called Logic, and sometimes we use Pro Tools. And sometimes I'll come up with some stuff and then I'll just start mumbling and singing some melodies. And for me, the process on the album, the lyrics kind of came last. Once I had a really great structure as far as the song went, and I had the sounds and the drums and some of the guitars and pianos and synths and all that. And then once I felt like I had something that was pretty special as far as melodies go, that's when I went back and I went to a couple of my friends who I do a lot of my close lyric songwriting with, and we kind of dialed in the songs and kind of figured out what they really were about. So that was kind of my process with this album in particular.
People are going to be able to get this album by the time they're hearing this. It's available on the streaming platforms. One record that I was listening to this morning that I really enjoyed a lot was Family Ties. I just really enjoyed that song, the melody of it, the messaging behind
That's
it. Can
awesome.
you speak a little bit to that, the origins of that particular song?
Yeah, I always like the word family ties. It's funny that you picked that song because that's not a song that people would usually pick, and I'm glad that it resonated. I always like that word family ties. I know there's the show, and I always thought, oh, it'd be cool just to write a song called Family Ties. So I figured out a way. That's where it started from. I like the idea of that song. My dad passed in 2017. And then right when we were beginning to make this album, my grandpa passed away, and he lived in Holland. My mom is from Holland, so I had to fly. We had to postpone starting the record, the album, and I had to fly to the funeral with my mom, and we did that whole thing. So that song in particular is really just about family and just learning where you're from. And so I had this really cool moment where I had that song. We were working that song, and I got to go home to feel like, oh, this is where my roots are from, and I got to hear stories about how my mom immigrated to America, how my grandpa immigrated from Indonesia to Holland. So I had all these things that were really rootsy, and I really felt like I knew where I was coming from. And so that song, as we were dialing the lyrics during the process also, it really turned into some sort of, it was about my dad learning about the lessons that he took, or that he gave me, that I took from him. And then, my mom, from my grandpa, and passing those down for me. So I'm glad that resonated with you, because that's one that's pretty special to me too. And I felt like it's going to fly under the radar a little bit. So yeah, that's what that one's about. It's about family. It's about just learning where you're coming from. And you hit it on the nose. That's kind of where I was going for that vibe.
Oh, that's great. I really, really enjoyed that song. When you think about Houston music in general, we have an art scene here that perhaps when people think of Texas, they're not so much thinking of Houston. They're thinking of Austin, where there's a big art scene, or they're thinking more so of a lot of country vibes coming out of the city.
Yeah.
Or even when you think of Houston's music, most people go straight to hip hop, and you think of the great renaissance we had from really the early 2000s into the mid 2000s with the Paul Wall, Slim Thugs, Chameleonaires, etc. For you, coming up in this city, how did Houston help shape the sound you have now?
Man, that's a great question. I grew up doing open mics around the city. I started in Huntsville, where I went to school, and then I moved into the city, and I just did open mics for a year at Bohemios and all these different clubs that were in town. And just getting a chance to sit down and connect with people. We were talking about a mutual person that we know earlier. That those types of things kind of really shaped where I was going. I always knew I wanted to do pop music. I always knew I wanted to do soul music. So, and more than anybody, Houston it's a diverse city, but it's very, very spread out because it's so big. So I think just me being able to find a group of people that kind of did similar music to me, and I would say Houston has a music scene, but I think it has a lot of music scenes. It has a lot of small demographics that kind of stick together, and so there's the alternative, there's the hip hop, there's the Christian, there's the gospel. There's not a lot of pop that do my thing. So that's why I felt like I've been able to stick out a little bit. But when you find those people that kind of get you and get what you're doing, I think you kind of hold them close. But for sure, open mics were super influential in my beginning and me trying to find my sound, just because I got up there and just tried stuff, and people knew I was cutting my teeth and I was just trying to learn and get better. But if it wasn't for those types of situations, I don't think I would have found my sound. And, as technology kind of grew, my sound kind of grew into the technologies. Back then, when I was doing music 15 years ago, it wasn't so prevalent that a guy would be making music by himself at a computer. There was a lot of gatekeeping as far as technology goes. That you didn't have the chance to sit in front of a computer and make your own sounds and things like that, unless you were super rich or you knew the right people or any of those things. Now it's a lot easier to put your hands on the music. And so as I've grown into those things, I feel like my music has developed and is embellished a little bit, and it's become more poppy and more soulful in all those different ways. So hope that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. And you definitely hit on the head when you talk about there's a mix of different scenes within the Houston music community. I mean, you think about when you mentioned people like yourself, there's Tim Qualls, there's the Tauntauns, the Suffers, Say Girl Say,
Yeah.
Fat Tony. I mean, the list goes on and on of all these names that have all also found their own footing and their own success. And to me, I feel like Houston offers a variety of different things, and it speaks to the diversity of the city, not just from a music standpoint, but from a any kind of arts, even a culinary standpoint. Definitely from a religious and political perspectives, like they're all over the place here in Houston. So you can actually draw inspiration from anywhere. Now, when you think about influences, when we start, whether you're starting as a radio host or you're starting as a musician or what have you, a lot of us almost mimic the ones that inspired us to start this, at least in my estimation. Who are your early influences that you were almost using as your muse, for lack of a better term, in the early stages of your career?
Well, earlier, I would say when I was doing those open mics, I was doing like 2 of my songs and then a Gavin DeGraw cover all the time, and so that was like my number one guy who I was just trying to mimic. What I didn't know is I didn't know that you could change keys back then. So I was singing these songs that were too high for me, and I was just screaming at the top of my lungs. It's actually how I met my wife. I was doing an open mic. I was singing Gavin DeGraw, and she was in the audience, and she was like, "Hey, I like that guy." So,
Oh, nice.
so thankful for him in that situation that I met my wife and all that. So Gavin DeGraw is definitely one. Ray Charles was a guy that I grew up really liking. He played on the piano. There's a UK artist. His name is Jamie Cullum. And he's this incredible jazz pop guy. And he does these amazing covers and all these things. Like he has this amazing cover of Rihanna. gosh, I forget the name of the song. But he just does all these things, and he can do, he really inspired me to kind of write these jazzier, bluesy pop songs. And the song that I have like the most success for as far as like Spotify playlists and stuff like that, it's just my best attempt to be Jamie Cullum. And so early on, that was just me just trying to mimic those other people. I feel like the album now, I've truly found my own thing, and developed into that. But if it wasn't for those guys early on, I don't think I would have found my footing the right way.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that you found kind of who Tim Qualls is as a musician, because so much of being an artist of any kind is throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks, seeing what resonates with what resonates with yourself. But that's also a fine line. How do you draw the line between I'm making music that I hope, because pop music in its name is popular music. You want this to be consumed by as many people as possible. And sometimes you start thinking when you're crafting an album, oh, I need this kind of song on here, or I need this because this will really get me on such and such playlist, or this might give me, this might give me a bigger radio audience, or more radio play. How do you draw the line between what you like as a musician and as an artist and what you think people might gravitate toward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not really sure I have the answer for that. I think, throughout the process, there were so many times we've had conversations of, should we elongate a song? Should we shorten it for radio, for Spotify? The trend in Spotify right now is to have a song under 3 minutes. So we discussed, okay, should we put a solo in the song? Should we not do that? On the album, we have a song called "I Swear to God I Could Try," and it's a ballad. It's piano, and then it's a cello. And then I was in the studio, and we were like, okay, it's a good timeline. And then I said, well, what if we just went into an orchestral section? So we had the cellist come back and record all these things, and we added synth. And so the song's like 7 minutes long. And so I knew that that's not appropriate for TV, for film, for radio. I know that it was, but in the moment, I was like, okay, I want to make this really important piece of art for myself. So I think when you're making those decisions and you're trying to figure out, you're just trying your best to do a little bit of all of the above. I think you're trying to make good art. I think you're trying to find something that connects and has connective tissue with all sorts of different genres and vibes and situations, business wise. But at the end of the day, a good song is a good song. And I think some of the best songs that are timeless, they can navigate these different waters throughout, generations or decades or whatever. And sometimes a good song's 2 minutes. Sometimes a great song is 4.5 minutes. You're never quite sure. And to be honest, none of us really know, right? We're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to play the algorithm. We're all just trying to figure it out. But sometimes when you know. And sometimes there's a saying that artists don't know what they have, So sometimes I don't know. Like you said, Family Ties earlier, that's an important song to me personally, but I didn't think it would really stick out compared to the other songs to somebody. So I just think you're always trying to, just trying to figure out some way to navigate the waters in the sense of, is it pop? Is it not? Is it radio friendly? Is it for Spotify? Is it just for me as an artist? Do I just need to get this off my chest? And what's cool about making an album, and I felt like I made an album in the old school way of, I wanted to make an album that you could sit down from song 1 to song 10 and me take you on a ride. And all the other radio considerations would kind of come during the process. But I think when you're in that process, I think you have a lot more freedom than you think it is, than a lot of people think you do. So I had fun. I enjoyed it. And I hope I kind of navigated. There's a few songs that are short. There's a couple songs that are long. And I feel like I kind of did a little bit of everything on the album. So, yeah.
What do you hope when people listen to Feel and they go 1 through 10? What do you want them to take away from it the most?
Where I'm at in my life is I'm just at a place where, when I was young, I wanted to be famous. And a lot of people did. And a lot of people, when they start doing music, they want to do all that stuff. For me, I just want them to feel like, okay, this is a good piece of art. I'm enjoying being in the moment with these songs. And so that's really the journey that I wanted to take people on, I guess. It was really just me discovering myself as an artist. I really felt like this album is the album I wish I had the ability technically, but also maturity wise 15 years ago to make. And I wasn't ready for that sort of thing. And this is the album. Finally, I've been able to put all those things together and kind of come out with a piece of art that I'm really, really excited about. I hope people hear, as far, if there's people that have been on my journey with me as an artist, I hope they see the maturity. I hope they see the growth. I hope it kind of resets the bar just a little bit, where they go, okay, this is different. This is a different type of Tim that is here now, that rather than the stuff that he's put out in the past. So yeah, I just want people just to enjoy the music and go, oh, this is good. I want people to like it and be in the moment there. So sorry, I'm rambling on that one, but yeah.
No, and you know what? I think you can sit here, Tim, and know that you made a very great album. You made a quality piece of art that I think is going to be enjoyed by the masses. And you have a fan in me, and I'm really thankful for you taking the time to chat with me today and give us a little more insight and some behind the scenes story from the album. And just congratulations on it. And I hope it's as successful as you want it to be.
Yeah, thank you, Bunch. I very much appreciate it and enjoyed being on here. Yeah.
Boom. There we go.